Welcome to The Choice to Grow. I'm Scott Schwenk. Through these dialogues, we'll explore fresh perspectives and discover practical tools for navigating a thriving life that adds value wherever we are. I'll introduce you to innovators and creators from across our world who embody what it means to cultivate growing as a way of life. Let's prepare together. Take a deep breath in. Hold the breath briefly as you soften your shoulders and soften the soles of your feet and palms of your hands. Then exhale like you're releasing tension and setting down a heavy burden from every cell. Now let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to The Choice to Grow. And this show is growing, and with your support, and I'm so grateful to all of you who are choosing to follow, share, like, leave your comments of what you're learning and growing through with the support of the episodes. Today's guest is another friend who I really treasure in so many ways, and her name is Kimberley Lafferty, Kimberley Theresa Lafferty, and she is a Lama in Vajrayana Buddhism, in the tantric tradition of Buddhism. We'll get into what that means and how you get there. She's a seasoned teacher-practitioner, meaning we're all still growing. So she's an incredible teacher with her own community and is still growing, specializing in constructive developmental psychology and Indo-Tibetan Vajrayana. And this is really, really important. This merger, this confluence, this co-support of the insights of advanced psychological understanding with the complexity and the incredible refinement of this ancient tradition called Vajrayana Yoga. She leads multi-year private spiritual education cohorts with Confluence Experience. That's the name of the operation, the Confluence Experience. Kimberley co-leads with Terri O'Fallon the penultimate Mind's Eye year-long developmental course of Stages International, and I'm finishing my last month of that year-long cohort. She's an active board member for the Association for Spiritual Integrity. Yes. Kimberley is also a wife and a mother to a young son living in a remote valley of the North Cascades of North America, which deeply impacts her worldview and practice. I met Kimberley first in Sedona, Arizona. We were all there for an integral theory conference, and particularly we connected at the MetaWare retreat, later stage practitioner retreat, afterwards. It was a small, curated, all of us in a house. None of it was planned, and it all was emergent. We created the retreat as we went with this amazing group of people. And Kimberley generously shared practices with us that she's been working with for very many years, including one of the things that I still remember is the cards that you carry that have a little ring on them that have all the many vows you took in becoming a practitioner and in becoming a Lama so that they're still present with you. And this piece really touches my heart because, well, there's a saying that my teacher makes often. She says, don't just stop at empowerment, go all the way to embodiment. And I try and teach this, I try and practice this. And what it can look like is having physical reminders in the space of what we are practicing, what we are reminding and remembering. And also I'm getting to know Kimberley much more deeply in the Mind's Eye course cohort. It's a small group of people from all over the world. I don't have much more to say to introduce you, but just deep bows, deep thank yous for being you, showing up with all that you are. Hi.
Hi, Scott. What a delight. And hi to all the listeners listening in the future, throughout space and time, just welcoming you here. This is going to be fun, Scott. I adore you. I feel like we're echoes of each other in different worlds, and I'm fascinated by what you bring. And excited to where this goes. So thanks.
So I was going to ask you a different question. Maybe we'll get to it later. What do you hear when you hear The Choice to Grow? But I actually really am interested in asking you, what does it mean from your seat at this stage in your life today to play the role of a Lama?
Yeah. Well, thanks for clarifying at this seat, because there's certainly a history of it and a story. I've had 5, 6 different cohorts and individual students. I am a Lama, so to speak, but in cohort learning, and groups of people sign up, usually not publicized or so very lightly, um, in a relationship with me and each other over time, a minimum of 3 years. It can be up to 7, depending on the emergence of the group and what practices they complete, frankly.
It
So,
stops at 7, huh?
yeah, up to now, I like a beginning and an end. So
Okay.
that's one thing that's different. It's not like I am your Lama forever. The way, although that relationship is there, it expresses and evolves. Sometimes it just becomes friendships, but the relationship stays there. So, yeah, what it means now with this cohort has actually become even more clear in this moment, including an experience that I've had over the past 2 weeks. And my intention with this cohort was to utilize, and we're in year 4, right? 3.5 right now. Utilize what Guru Yoga, which is a huge part of Vajrayana Buddhism, sometimes known as Tantra, often not what people imagine when they think of Tantra. But Guru Yoga is a big part of it. But how to keep the juice and the joy and the power of a lineage and a teacher and having something to bend your knee to, right? Like, as Ken often says and others, the ego needs something to bend its knee to, Ken Wilber. Um, yeah. And how to do that without being silly or without having it be all about me.
Or
So,
performative.
or performative, and also yet acknowledging it's not a performance, but there is an embodiment of something other than Kimberley that's also happening when I'm in that seat.
Mm.
The many things I could say about it, but one of the shortest uh, few sentences that might encapsulate it is when I am on the seat, I'm the lineage holder and I'm teaching. When I'm holding space, I'm the lineage holder and I'm teaching. And now with this mature cohort, many of which who've done lengthy solitary retreats, many group retreats, many of them just completed 5-week solitaries in their life and also going away from their life. The guru has also moved to the collective. That golden shadow that we tend to project on the guru in this mature cohort has also moved to be emergent through the collective without it not also being me or somebody else, another teacher, when they take the seat. So, yeah, that's what being a Lama means that now. It's that I unabashedly say, I have the authority, the power, the empowerment, the experience to hold this when I'm holding it. And also when we're in relative reality with each other, just people, humans also. Um, it's the power is in whoever in the collective, like it emerges through conversation and relationship and community.
Mm.
So that's what it means now. Oh, I'll pause
How
there.
does one become qualified in your tradition to become a lama? And
Yeah.
is it something that one would even want if they knew what was involved?
Right. Well, I can tell you how it happened for me. And I'm even going to share something that I don't know if I've actually ever shared publicly. I first, I had an experience. I had what in our developmental psychological world, in the world of adult development, we might call a state experience when I was 28. Other worlds would call it a satori or an enlightenment experience. And it came, of course, from a dark night, from being completely just dissolved. It came through dance, and it also came through yoga asana, a yoga asana pose. I was in Paschimottanasana, which is forward fold, spontaneously, and um, clear light experience, we would call in my tradition now. It also did push me into another stage. It actually was probably what we call a fourth person perspective stage, just really stabilized and was expanded. But the state experience was probably non-definable. I'm almost, it's hard for me to define state experiences these days. Um, and then I went looking for who could who could not only sort of explain something that I didn't doubt at all, but have a conversation about it. I knew I wasn't the only person, obviously, having these experiences. And I found Tibetan Buddhism, and they were having the conversation I wanted to have. Did my first 30-day retreat shortly thereafter, met Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who I told the experience to and told, you're not supposed to talk about the extraordinary experiences in my tradition. I don't know about yours.
Depends on which arm of the tradition. When I was growing up in Siddha Yoga, in that ashram, there was an experiences department, and after intensives and whatnot, they would collect experiences, and then teachers would weave them. They were archived and alphabetized or whatever, and people could weave them into their talks. Like, oh, once an experience happened with this practice, blah blah blah. However, in my Sri Vidya practice, we're encouraged to keep these things very quiet.
Don't talk about
so. Both are true.
Both are true. Well, you could tell your teacher, right? So it took some time, but I got an audience with Lama Zopa Rinpoche at Kopan Monastery outside of Kathmandu. And some of your listeners may be familiar with it. The 30-day Lam Rim retreat at Kopan is kind of famous in the, the first, second, third generation of Tibetan Buddhist Gelugpa circles. And I told Lama Zopa about my experiences, and he immediately told me to start a Dharma center where I lived. And he gave me a name, and he basically said, you need to start teaching. I was like, dude, this is my first 30-day retreat. But what do you say to the Rinpoche?
Yes,
Okay.
please, thank you.
Yes, please. Okay. And I did for a year with a genius, amazing, wonderful partner at the time. My partner at the time, amazing man. I'm now in deep retreat in Crestone, teaching others. And which led to other things. But so from the beginning, I was being pushed to teach. Now, recognize up to then, I was a corporate girl, because I needed to pay my student loans, who was very dissatisfied and had that kind of existential crisis at 28 because of that. Lost my spiritual compass, wanted it back, yearned for it, came crashing down. Here we go for the rest of my life. So then with, Lama Zopa led to another teacher and to a deep, intensive study. Then you start to do retreats. I went through intensive sutra study. I went through 7 years of Tantra college, did my requisite retreats, which in the Vajrayana tradition, you need to do a minimum of 4. They usually take about 5 weeks solitaries, and I've done multiples of those. I was, I've done a lot of solitary retreat. When it's counted up, it's more than 3 years, 3 days, and 3 months. So, in my tradition, you do it as part of your year, and then you go out and teach, and then you study, and then you go into retreat, and then you go out and teach, and then you study. So it becomes a sort of lifestyle. So then my teachers told me, and then they told me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and started calling me Lama publicly. That's how it first happened also.
Huh.
So, yeah.
So there's also the contextual ability to give teachings. This is something I continue to learn about, sometimes stumble over, is like when I'm going to give an important practice, especially one that requires an empowerment, I
Yeah.
need to know enough about the background to give the context to the student.
Oh, yeah.
So here you are being asked to go teach, and you're like, well, what do I teach?
Oh, well, I was really fortunate because my main teacher, Geshe Michael Roach, was a Princeton scholar, Sanskrit scholar, presidential, scholarship from Princeton, and the first American Geshe. And so what he did was he took the Geshe program, which is like 20 years of study, which he went to India to do for us, and turned it into courses, and made it available in these courses, which then I had translated and then, learned enough Tibetan. I'm certainly not a translator, learned enough little Tibetan to sort of be able to understand, learned it, the Sanskrit alphabet. And once you know the Sanskrit alphabet, Sanskrit is so poetic and short, and you look up the roots, you can, not that you're your own Sanskrit scholar, but you can get so much meaning from just looking at the roots of a Sanskrit word, because it's the mother tongue. It's an Indo-European language. And so I learned enough to do that, and had master teachers myself. Ken Rinpoche Lobsang Tarchin in New Jersey, who's, strong in the Dalai Lama lineage, the Dalai Lama many teachings. So I did have material I had great teachers, and we created curriculum,
Hmm.
and made these teachings that were usually only available to monks, available to Westerners and women and me, The other thing I wanted to say too, I think the reason I was pushed to teach, probably too young, I certainly have made many mistakes, but was in my corporate life, I did different things, but I was like national training director for
Ah,
a very, I was a trainer. And so there's something, I'm not going to, I'm sure that influenced my teachers telling me to teach also.
sure
I'm
influenced me. I
assuming.
grew up in a training and development household. My mom was a corporate trainer and executive coach who started
There you go.
handing me books in seventh grade that she was reading for business.
Right. So, right. So there's that. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, it's an
yeah.
interesting thing as I contemplate my own life as a teacher and how long it's taken to willingly take the seat with the understanding that there's always tremendously more to learn and the humility that's required for that, but to take the seat. I'll never forget I was giving a workshop at that point in time. It was the ecstatic breath work that I was traveling around with many years ago in New York City. It was Robin Quivers' apartment, who's Howard Stern's co-host. Amazing woman, amazing woman. And afterwards, this gal Ariane, who was at the workshop, this South African, she took me to dinner afterwards to go get a tasty burger. And she looks at me. She goes, "From now on, when you're done teaching, stay in the seat. Don't wobble in the seat. It's confusing for people." I was like, oh, but at that age, and there's always been, as far as I can recall, there's always been something that's more than Scott, that's not owned by Scott, that has been able to move through
That's right. It
in
has
lots
to.
of different ways. But I just didn't feel comfortable with it for so long because of
Hmm.
my own shadow, my own unresolved growing up experiences and attachment wounds and insecurities. Like, how could I be stable in the seat with this? I don't want people to think that I'm actually fully, anything.
Right. Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing, is like to navigate and juggle. Like, there's so much more that we don't know, but what is it to be firm without claiming an identity? When
That's right.
doing a role, what is it to be firm without claiming an identity or claiming any attainment, and being of service, but not giving more than one is qualified to, and not giving less than the student is ready for?
Hmm. Yes. Yes. Well, to me, that's an indicator that you are a qualified teacher, the fact that you're asking this question.
Hmm.
The fact that this is a was or a wobble or is, the fact that you're holding this polarity, apparent polarity, right? Between lots of things like divine and human, or Scott or not Scott, or whatever it is, the fact that you're holding it, that struggle should be there, or that question, at least, if not a struggle, should be there in any good teacher, in my opinion. And this is what we've seen through the Association for Spiritual Integrity too. Um, yeah, it's a constant question, and we've all could tell stories of where we can learn the most, I think, from those who did it poorly.
Yeah.
Don't do that, you know, and try new things, constantly innovating. One thing I wanted to say too about empowerments, something I really appreciate about Tibetan Buddhism is Vajrayana, is it's so scholarly. The Himalayas were hard to get into, until the Chinese came in, right? But they were hard to get into. So in a lot of these big mountain hilltop monasteries, there are old texts, sometimes the last of their kind. And one of the organizations that some of my teacher and friends have done is they're like the Indiana Jones of the world. Literally, they have for 30 years gone around found that last crumbling text or two, or a whole library, hired local, often women, in North India, in Mongolia, in Tibet, to input the text, to translate them and input these crumbling leaf texts, and then offer it to the world for free.
Yeah.
And so I have and this is one of the great things in modernity, I have a plethora of texts that are also what I teach. Right? So I have Six Yogas in Ropa, or I have Padampa Sangye Silver Egg, or I have the Yoga Sutra, or and a translation that has recently been found, or a copy of it, a version of it that's pretty, been found recently in the Himalayas. It's so one thing too, a nice thing about having an American teacher as one of my main teachers is, and this does not happen in other Tibetan Buddhist centers, as far as I'm aware. I'm sure it does, but as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen it anywhere else. Is we had our entire Wang text. I did not get this from Lama Zopa Rinpoche when I got Chen Rezing empowerment from him. We did not get a Wang text. My American Geshe teacher, who has his own controversies, they're light compared to many others, translated the text, gave it to us, spent 4 weeks talking about it in class before we even went into the Wang. That Wang means empowerment, right, in
Ah,
Tibetan. And then we had it. So when I do an empowerment, you talked about this, I have a text. Does it mean I always follow it? Yes and no, but there's a text that's this ancient, like 2,000-year-old text or something, that is about ritual and recitation, which we've lost a lot of the time. So that's helpful. Like, I actually have a text for it.
I think it's
So,
important to possibly insert something here and bring some of the listeners along about these texts on the whole, in the variations of Sanskrit and Tibetan, are not simply words about something. And they exist on at least three levels. They tell a story, like the Vedas tell a story. They are prescriptions or sadhana manuals for how to do and what to do in a practice. And they are also living energy streams through the sound pulsations that each of these letters and their framing make, that literally shape and direct universal power. And that is the thing that we miss as Westerners when we approach a tradition or a teacher where we're going to have to learn a text or spend time with a lot of syllables in, say, Sanskrit or Tibetan, and go, well, why do I need to do this? Can't you just give me the English translation? Or the question I really dislike the most, and I try and be as patient because I get it, is every time I give a mantra and an empowerment, people ask many, many times, what's the translation of this into English? I'm like, you can't. You need at least 50 to 100 words to maybe get remotely at the sense of the sound pulsation and the power.
yeah.
The entire Sanskrit alphabet, probably similar to Tibetan, is a mantra and is used in very powerful ways to transform what we think of as fixed and solid reality, whether that's the fixed and solid reality of my identity that carries pain about what my mother did or didn't do, or
Yeah.
whether it's the seeming fixed reality about a wall or a stone.
Yeah. That's right. So beautiful. Everybody just take a breath in and a breath out and let that settle in, because that is wisdom. That is wisdom. Yes, yes. The power and the mystery of it, the mystery of these ancient, beautiful rituals.
And that all the sages and saints or any practitioner's realization in the lineage of that text or teaching or mantra is embedded there. Like, there's so much energetic support. It's not simply a thought I think instead of another thought.
Hmm. Beautiful. Yes. Yes, absolutely. I let me ask you about this. One of the shifts from, I think of it as like sutra, which are the open teachings, is like the logos, right? Like, what does the Sanskrit mean?
Yeah.
Tantra is the mythos, and there is a surrender, or that's somewhat required to the unknowing, right? To letting the sound, the recitation. Okay, you need to go in my case, it's going to take about 5 weeks. You need to go into solitary retreat, no phone, no books, no people. We do it really strict,
No cognizing, basically. All that is to eliminate the tendency to do everything through thought as an
through thought.
intermediary.
Right. And through identity, often no mirrors. And then you have to say 110,000 mantras. Right. You have to do this. Part of
Same
the
mantra or different mantras?
same, the first 100 are the same. The last 10,000 is a purifying one, like one to clean it up, get ready to get out, basically.
And is that preparation for the main retreat practice, or that is the retreat practice?
That is the preparation for completion stage. It's called and I'll explain what both of these are. It's called a lerung, and it means to get fit. It means to get yourself ready for the completion stage practices, which are in, Anutara Yoga Tantra, empowerments and practices, whatever deity you're working it with, whether it be a Mantaka or Vajrayana or Chakra Samvara. These are the Anutara Yoga Tantras. Completion stage is what I hear you often describe, actually, Scott. It's working with some people call it the subtle body. Some people refer to it more as the causal body. It's more than the energetic body. It's the pranic body. Maybe what people think of as chakras or energy centers, working with pranayama, with your breath, with the 8 limbs of yoga. It's working with the body more and the energies and powers and desires of the body that's been, in a way, purified or gotten ready, and included in that are embodiment practices as well. But a lot of it is 4 times a day in this lerung. You sit down and you do a sadhana, as you described, a very poetic story, yes, but it's a meditation instruction manual, 200 pages long, of somebody's state experience, basically. And visualizations and moving around and interactions. And the heart of it is where you basically turn into light and turn into a star. And if you look at pictures of how a star is born, it looks like her. It looks like what the sadhana is describing. It's really interesting. Yeah, I think I forgot the second part of your question.
Yeah, and I think my question started with your question.
Right.
Well, let's just take a breath and tune in. And
Yes.
everybody, let's just take a pause moment, because Kimberly and I have a lot of collective information and training. And at moments, if you're feeling fire hosed, I invite you back to the opening, which is soften the soles of your feet, soften the palms of your hands, soften the corners of your eyes, region of your ears, tongue, pelvic floor. You don't have to understand anything we're talking about for this particular podcast episode to be of great benefit. There is an endless, I want to say army, but I want a better word, army of energetic beings sending support, energetic support through this. Like, we're not just here for our own sake. We are aware that there's an energy that's present as we choose to tune into these things. So you don't have to understand the words. You can listen more than once, and you could actually kind of take it in like you're reading Braille, like listen with your hands or listen with your skin, as opposed to trying to listen with the intellect. And certain things will stand out, and you can definitely ask questions, and we'll try and do a Q&A at some point together. But
It'll be fun.
Yeah. So getting the nervous system fit is really what I hear and see through a lot of these practices that I'm doing, that you teach, that others are doing, getting the nervous system fit. And what I mean by that is I've recognized that there are certain practices I've had to take it down a bit, because I started experiencing what in my tradition we call heat symptoms. So reactivity, like hostility or agitation or anxiety or panic or overwhelm or sleeplessness, can be indications of too much heat. And all forms of alchemy, which is what we are talking about here, transformation through alchemy, through sound pulsations and awareness, require fire, visible or invisible fire, but we need to be able to handle the amount of fire that's moving. And so more isn't always better. And it's important to be able to help the nervous system and the physical body be able to work with and hold these energies without fragmentation. What do you have to say about
Mm,
that?
so much. For us Tibetan Tantra, we call it lung. Lung. Lung's one of those words that means many different things, but one of the things it does mean is this wind disorder. It's considered a wind disorder. It's interesting. In your tradition, it's heat, but it comes from the fire of too much practice. What we're getting fit for these practices, which is often in our fire practices, that's the first completion stage practice you get to.
Tumo?
Tumo and versions of it, that working with the subtle heat points in the subtle body. But yes, for Tumo, yes. um, yes, so this getting fit, it's getting fit the nervous system, yes, but also the physical connection of the mind and the body is very much used and articulated. It's said our mind rides on our winds, our prana, and affects the body. It's like the connection between the mind and the body is considered your thoughts that ride on your prana. And so it's utilizing both inner thought with sadhana and mantra and checking our mind, making mind object, subject, object throughout, which is what those cards that I carry around are for.
With your
Work
vows?
when the mind does come up, we're working with it and getting to quiet mind, um, and then getting the body fit too. And that doesn't mean looking like whatever we're supposed to look like, but getting,
Six pack abs?
yeah, I mean, that's nice, but, it is there is and that's part of the thing you get with tantra, the importance of embodiment, because the embodiment is connected to the mind.
Yeah.
Mind as not the thinker, but, Tibetans use mind more as, I mean, it's almost the closest Western correlate might be soul or consciousness, sort of, like a subtle sort of consciousness.
Not quite universal mind yet, though, right? Or is
Um
it?
It is. Mind is the
Okay.
relative side. It's the relative side. Like, it's not negative or positive.
In our
It's like
developmental language, would we call that timeless, boundless awareness?
the we would call the closest correlate for timeless, boundless awareness, I think, is what we call clear light mind, which is the tantric definition of emptiness, actually, and mind, of clear and knowing, luminous and aware. Clear and knowing, luminous and aware. That is the nature of mind. Yeah. That's according to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama.
Hmm.
That's how he
Hmm.
defines it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, in part, managing the amount of practice. And
Yes.
some of what we've said so far is like more too much is too much, and it's not necessarily better. However, many practitioners I've come across who are newer to these practices, at least in the current lifetime, can mistake discomfort and being out of one's comfort zone for being too strong about practice and then not really break through. What would you say about that?
Yes. Well, yeah, it depends where you are on the path. Like, if um one thing I've tracked is, especially when we're just stepping into real what we would call renunciation, like making our spiritual awakening a priority. Maybe we had a disaster happen that pushes us into it, like we get sick or someone gets sick or someone dies or maybe we do the soft path of renunciation where we have everything we want and we're still not happy. But there does need to be this sort of, I need to practice. And that's when you go hard and find a teacher and find a community that can reflect back to you. Don't just go by yourself in your office on Google. Go find, you want to learn something, you got to take it seriously. So at the beginning, it's time to put the gas pedal on without leaving your family and leaving your house and quitting your job and doing it. Stay responsible, stay grounded. W- You know, we've also found, as the awakening occurs, we learn how to focus, as we learn to be saturated in what's under the narrative, as we practice our meditations in a variety of traditions and ways, and we have to find the ones that are best for us. As we get under it and taste liberation, let's say, you know, see our thoughts are just wisps more and more, and look for the self that we think is there and is not. Look under our meanness and see there is no me the way we thought. The more we taste that, the less we need a little gas goes farther, I found. right? Like it's not that you're not practicing anymore, but it's more allowing. There are different stages we go through um, once we've gained these realizations. And a pragmatic thing I have found is I need to do less yoga to get the same result than I used to, which I guess would make sense. So I need to go a little less hard there. I think it's all very personal. However, one of the most important offerings we can give ourselves and practitioners is um, the signs of when it's gone too far. The heat, you were saying anxiety, in ours, lack of sleep, cranky for no reason, eating too much or not being able to eat, um, headaches, um, go easy. This is a daily correction that one does when you're really practicing hard, when you're doing tapas, when you're changing up the habits and doing your meditations and doing your physical practices and doing your mantras. Ease up. Um, so you don't get too much heat, as you say, and know what those signs are. And that's why being in a community and having a teacher is so important.
Something we haven't touched on yet here is the importance of some of the things we can do to support the body. Like Ayurveda is really, really, really profound for supporting the body. And it's so much of it is about oil, high quality oil, just
Yes.
about in every orifice and on the skin.
Yes.
Like I have oil drops that go in the nose, in the ears, on the top of my head, and then abhyanga, which is head to toe. I remember I was beginning a practice to Chandi. There's an epic that even Indians don't know about as much anymore, but it's
Right.
right up there with the Vedas, the Mahabharata, and the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, all those, which is the Devi Mahatmyam, and it's 700 lines of how the goddess overcomes the demons, which we understand with right teaching are the inner enemies, like attachment and aversion,
Right.
endless desires that give birth to endless karma and stuff like this. Well, this practice, in order to be effective, because it's working with a wrathful deity, we could say,
Yeah.
or another way to say it is ugra, which means an upsurge of profound force.
Mm.
In that force, there's going to be heat. And so one of my friends who's a teacher in my teacher's lineage just said, you have to minimally 3 times a week be doing this abhyanga, this head to toe oil massage.
Yes. Yes.
And I've noticed if I go too many weeks without doing abhyanga, I start to feel off because I have a
Yeah.
very deep practice that's daily and full of a lot of fire. And I have to do this.
Yes.
What are the things that you offer to your students right out of the gate that are physical interventions, whether it's dietary alterations or cold
So
or
much.
hot exposure, or.
Right. Oh, so much. Yes. I've written papers on it. Well, the first thing is for me, just personally, Ayurveda was a game changer, and I found Ayurveda, and I'm not saying it's for everybody, but just to report to you people, these are important information, right? Like, and this is when I was in retreat 3 months a year, going, very intensive retreat time. Now my retreat is more immersed in my life as well, not quite as intensely now that I'm a householder and have a child and everything else. Um, yeah, so warm water, like baths. If you go over more than one night without sleep, contact your teacher, contact your community right away. More than one night is not okay. Um, you must sleep. Naps, yeah, warm water, swimming, water, especially on the heat. Water brings it down. It's basically considered, as I said, chronic disorder. And too much wind, really, especially in the heart, pranavayu, which is at our heart and goes down our arms, often from too much meditating. Don't go read a book on emptiness. Go watch Netflix for a day. Really, the opposite. Like, no sugar. Ayurvedic diet really helps. It game changer for me, as I said. It got everything straight after that as I was going hard. Um, Oils, um, you know, find your doshas. And I can recommend, I don't get a kickback for this, but Banyan Botanicals has a great free dosha assessment for
Yeah.
listeners out there. Scott, you agree? Yeah.
And
So
dosha, just for your listeners, dosha is your type. If you don't know that, like there's three qualities and we're a mingling of them. You could be triple of something, God bless you. But you have pitta, which is fire, you have kapha, which is water, and you have uh, vata, which is air. And so these air imbalances are vata imbalances, like
they're
things like
vata
flying
imbalances.
in a airplane can stimulate a vata imbalance. And it's important to get in water and get grounded. But carry on. Banyan
Yep.
Botanicals has a free assessment to get a sense of it'll ask you all these questions. You want to go deeper, you actually sit with a Vaidya, really gifted Ayurvedic practitioner who will check your eyes, check your tongue, and
Yeah.
sense with their wisdom stream direct interventions for you.
That is the game changer. Abhyanga is also a game changer. The oil, you can do it in your shower. Um,
I
so
recommend doing it at somebody else's house or at a gym. I learned this the hard way and I clogged my pipes and I ruined towels.
oh no,
So I do it at Equinox. God bless you, Equinox, where I know
thank you,
they
Knox.
crazy industrial washing of those towels. So I Abhyanga, I chill for a few minutes and then I go in the steam room, which is a different form of Abhyanga, and then, towel it
Let
off
it.
in the shower. But
Sauna's good. Yeah.
yeah,
But basically ease up. And I do want your listeners to hear this. If you've been you've been meditating hard, you've been doing all the things, ease up a little bit. Like go on a walk in nature.
yeah.
Have a good laugh. You know, that can help.
Hug somebody with good energy.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Self massage too. I was a massage therapist while I was getting started in LA with all my different modalities. And I forget that I was really good at it. People would
Yeah.
Condé Nast magazines would write about it and like this. And I'll remember something, oh, wait, I don't have to wait to go pay somebody. Like, I just need to start and start paying attention with my hands to what the tissue is doing. And it forms a deeper intuition also about relating to other people. If I'm really paying attention to, like, I'm massaging my shoulder or my forearm after a workout, and then paying attention, I'm not just pushing. It's a collaboration between the part of the body that's being touched and that which is touching it. It informs how I show up with all of life. Because how much of my life, at least, did I show up like a puppy with huge legs that didn't know how to operate, with too much power entering into a small room, didn't know how to titrate or like bring the energy down or use less force and actually sense that?
Yes. It's beautiful. Yes. I love that, Scott. Yeah. How do you do that? What's it like now for you as you walk through the world?
Hmm. Well, today is different than 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I was reading too much news and was getting really overwhelmed and getting caught in ordinary mind into like, what if and oh my, and things are going to be, as opposed to, wait a minute, I and all of us are the distribution mechanism for source's blessing stream. And I'm not helping anybody by getting lost in the tumble of a projection of a story of what could happen, with this, that, and the other thing. So today, where I stand walking through the world is more and more consistently feeling in the world, but not of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not like all day 100%. Like if I see somebody, dude I find really attractive, I'm like, whoa, hey, hi, wow, hot guy. Um,
Yeah.
but it's never lost. And in fact, even 2016, when I did 9 ayahuasca ceremonies, awareness never went away in
Mm-hmm.
any state, no matter how intense, whether there was hallucinations or body was shaking, or twice I
Yeah.
went into
Yes.
serotonin syndrome, which can be really dangerous, too much serotonin dumping in the experience at once, and like heart rate spiking and dropping, temperature rising and dropping. There was never a loss of basic awareness. And I'm gonna
Yes.
tell on myself. So once before quarantine, 5 days before we went into quarantine for this whole COVID business, I had been teaching. I taught the very last class at Wanderlust Hollywood. It was an evening breathwork class, and I was somewhat tired when I got home. I had food in the short ribs in the slow cooker that I was excited about, and I remembered I had this bottle, I had been microdosing LSD for a while, and I later shifted that to psilocybin under supervision. But I had this bottle. I was like, I'm going to put that in the fridge for a rainy day. Surely there's residue in there. So I don't think I've ever told this publicly. Feels kind of
Ooh.
vulnerable, but whatever.
Mm.
So I got some purified water. I sucked it up into the little bottle, squirted it out into the spoon, and thank God I did not eat that whole spoon of water. I don't know if I would still be here today to talk about it.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, if you've ever any of you done psychedelics, there's a period of time when you're coming up. You haven't yet gotten to the plateau of where you're going to be for the majority of the journey. And so it took 6 to 7 hours to come up before it stabilized.
Mm.
And so I'm sitting in the chair in my room that I was used to sitting in for private sessions, and I stayed there, and there was a yantra like the one behind me, but different in front. And there was tons of visual distortion, audio distortion, but basic awareness never went away. The basic knowledge that all is well, there's a ground of being, and I'm rooted in it, never went away. It's like some version of like early blush awareness that there's a healthy parent energy inside of me, despite what I didn't get from my own physical parents, that can provide grounding, that can provide clarity, that can provide support. And so that's just continued to grow in all of this time.
So I wonder, can I ask you about that? Is that okay? Can
Yeah,
I ask you a little
for
bit? Okay.
sure.
So, so the healthy parent would be a part, right? If we're talking about it, be like maybe a capital P part, right? But
Okay.
that kind of healthy parent energy, which is so important that we cultivate along with our spiritual awakening, is so essential that, as we get under the narratives and begin to see the nature of our mind, love, we know we're on track when love for self and others is the tangible result. It's like the tangible feel we have, right? So, but you being aware, what I hear as a developmentalist that I would ask more about, you being aware of awareness naturally, without effort, I would assume, just as it is, as this arising, might be fifth person perspective really just solidifying, right? When
Yeah.
when you don't have the distractions of the world and the vicissitudes and stuff, it's right there. It's
Yeah.
always right there. When you're in an experience, it's always right there.
Yeah. And in my case, fifth person perspective really solidified or dawned quite strongly. I guess it would have been 6 years before that, 6 or 7 years
Mhm.
before that,
Right, right,
and
right,
then
right.
got tested by Terri just to check it out.
Yeah.
Um, that didn't mean that all the lines of my attention were accessing that fifth person perspective.
Sure, sure, and then you went into those psychedelic experiences, and you will never lose it because it's
Yeah.
right there. So,
Yeah.
interesting. I have a similar thing happen. Psychedelics are more new to me. It's a recent experimentation. I've been always the one that just held it and didn't do it. I don't mean held journeys, but hold the stories from my students and friends. But I had that same experience, always already aware.
Yeah, and in my case, I've been a microdoser for a long time, using that for health protocols, and I have there is dementia and Alzheimer's in my family, so some of it's just been prophylactic in that regard. Also, just to keep working with the plasticity, supporting the body, this neuroplasticity, as I'm doing these practices to quicken the embodiment.
Yes,
I don't recommend that anybody just jump into any, this is full disclosure, jump into
right.
any psychedelic work without really knowing what you're getting into. And ideally, the first few times being under supervision by somebody who's got a therapeutic background, who really
Yes,
knows what they're doing and knows how to adjust if something gets a little wonky. Um,
yes,
I started practicing serious yoga, and I don't mean physical yoga, I mean the other seven limbs,
right.
when I was 22. August 13th, 1994, the lights came on and never went off in a meditation intensive at the Siddha Yoga Meditation Ashram. And we were right away in that intensive introduced to what they called the witness. The witness.
Mm,
We would probably call that metacognition at this point, in the terms of the level at which I was able to access it back then. I don't think it was the full awareness of awareness,
right.
but
Metacognitive
whenever
awareness. Yes. It
Right. Like
wasn't
I could observe my
revolutionary,
thinking, I could observe my mind, I could observe my
right,
body, I could observe my emotions. And
which
then
is
it just grew and
revolutionary.
grew. It
Yeah, yeah,
is. And
yeah.
I think in my case, it like slipped in the middle of the night unannounced that it kept gradually increasing to greater awareness of just bare awareness. And I'm sure there's much more to be aware of than I yet am, but it wasn't like there was a sudden, oh, this is awareness of awareness, like
Mhm.
kaboom, like a flash of lightning. You just kind of just gradually through the practice, the consistency of practice. Oh. And I will say, actually, as I think of it, just flashed in my mind the cover of Michael Singer's first book, The Untethered Soul,
Mm.
really helped me to realize, oh, this is awareness of awareness.
Mhm. Mhm. Right, what people are codifying is that.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
It's interesting, I'd love to have a deeper conversation, sort of the nerd in me tracking throughout our stories and our these decades since we've both been practicing for quite a while, the different state, just kinda geek out about that. My guess is you had state access through all the tiers, um,
Yeah.
because of the practice, because of the practice, basically.
When I
Yeah.
was little, I wouldn't say little because I didn't feel little at the time. I would have been, my memories of it that stick out are like 9, 10 years old. Still living in Rochester, New York. My dad had bought us a house after splitting up with my mom, and there were these two oak trees in the front yard. And one in particular that was just easy for me to climb up to, and I would sit in it for hours. And it was the other day that I realized when I looked at the experience through the lens of memory, I was meditating, but I wasn't trying to meditate. It was a spontaneous, non thinking presence where I felt one with the sphere of nature.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'd say, yeah, it did start pretty young. Um, and I think that's part of what made it so confusing. There were a few years after I came out as gay that I thought, oh, maybe a lot of my confusion was not knowing I was gay and feeling other from that. I
Mm.
think the other was I natively, as a child, didn't see the world the way people seemed to be saying they were seeing the world. And it created this kind of cognitive dissonance and this distrust in my own knowing that has taken decades to digest and get back to what's true here,
Mhm.
while giving room now to other people's experiences without having to convince them of my view or change theirs.
Mhm. Yeah. So when you were a child, that view that you would share wasn't affirmed or seen or reflected or mirrored.
No,
Yeah.
no. My parents were doing the best they could with all of their stuff. I mean, they were maybe like yours. They were in their early 20s when I was born,
Mhm.
and they were not in a settled relationship
Right.
pretty much in any area of life.
Yes. It sounds very familiar to mine. Yes. Yes. Right. I feel that I have a similar my parents are of a similar age, and I also had spiritual experiences, let's call it that, or deep state experiences. Sometimes we use that term, often with concrete reality like nature, right? With the concrete, we call it the concrete collective, just form with nature, with animals, with it's so embodied. We're so embodied. We don't have all these complexities layered on. And so we are nature, our bodies are merged with it at the same time. And that was my refuge in many ways. My parents were also doing the best they can. I wasn't hit, or I was safe, physically. I had, food and shelter and all of
I
this.
was hit,
You were hit. Yeah.
yeah, by
I'm
my
sorry.
dad.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Not like
I'm
not like punched or anything. I mean, it was like what was considered normal in the 70s, which was spankings with a hand or a
spanking.
belt. And man, he really knew how to pack a wallop.
Dang it, little Scott. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, samsara, you know,
Yeah.
samsara, people doing their best and losing their mind. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's so clear, but I'm not bypassing this, Kimberly. I know you know what I
yeah.
mean. Like where I sit today and I contemplate those things, I can see his background. I can
Yeah.
see his upbringing. And I have so much compassion. You know, and the man has cut me out of his life entirely 5 years ago, right after my mom died of cancer. I really feel tremendous compassion. There are certain times when something will arise and I will let myself go, fuck that guy. But
Sure.
it's not like it's I wish him any harm. In fact, I hold him in prayer for his happiness, for his highest good. May he end his life resolved,
Yes.
resolved, however that gets there, really resolved.
Yes. May it be so. May he end his life resolved. Yes. It's beautiful. Well, that is the fruit of the path of practice, of where you are now, and how we find compassion. We know we're on track when we're finding compassion, for him, and also the part of you that still says fuck you once in a while.
Totally, totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of want to cycle to, and we can keep exploring states because
Yeah.
I'm super happy to explore states. I kind of want to cycle to, I'm aware and I'm deeply respectful and appreciative of preliminary practices in Buddhism. And
Yeah.
Daniel P. Brown being one of the only examples of a lineage holder who found a way around it that worked, that was vetted by his lamas, around doing the 7 things of 100,000 times, 100,000 physical prostrations, 100,000 guru mantras. I don't know the others, but like as a teacher, I have so much of an easier time working with people who've applied themselves consistently to training their mind and body.
Mhm.
What are you seeing as a teacher in terms of, are there skillful replacements? How do you put them out in front of students and show why it's so beneficial so they really want to do it and follow through, kind of thing?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, the one of the things I love so much about Gelugpa Tibetan Buddhism in particular, which is the lineage of Jason Kappa. And for your listeners, this was like the Shakespeare and, you know, Plato of Tibetan Buddhist philosophy. He lived 1357 to 1419
Was
and
he the first
founded
Dalai Lama?
he was not the first Dalai Lama, but the first Dalai Lama then came in his lineage, and he was a
Ah, so he was
reformer.
the guy that reincarnated as the first Dalai Lama.
No, I
No.
don't think no, he doesn't have a reincarnation.
Okay.
Yeah, which is unique. He's so amazing. And I mean, I could go off. The lineage is supernatural in origin always. It's always Manjushri comes down and gives him the text and he channels Manjushri. It's awesome, which I love. Give me all that. This is part
Yeah,
of our
yeah.
mythos and our history.
So this is where everybody that gets into the Harry Potter of it all, and it is real. It is real. People can fly. People can leave imprints in rocks of their hands and feet. Like these things
He's
actually
got the feet.
happen, but
He's
that's
got
not
the
why we practice.
That's not why we practice. And it's part of our human story. It's our humanities, are these stories which we find. So Jason Kappa, and, of course, his students in the lineage, they developed this thing called the Lam Rim. And it's a course of path of practice, and it's developmental. It's developmental both in practice and in realization. And then Sutra goes to Tantra. And so there is a journey and that one goes through. And I also, in the past years, have, um, you know, crossed with that developmental understanding. And so I am looking for, the people who do best with me in my tantric cohorts tend to be late fourth person, generally centered, late fourth up through 6+ now as we're going, and growing. And so that I don't have to spend years teaching construct awareness, what we would call, which, and we still review it and go over it because being able to explain it skillfully and then teach others construct awareness, I think is one of the great gifts of Gelugpa Tibetan Buddhism.
Bring
Yeah.
us that sharp arrow that hits the point. Just tell us construct awareness for the new listener. Like, what does it mean to be construct aware in one's
Yes.
own life?
Yes. So, everybody who's listening, I want you to just look around in your room. We'll start there. We'll do this quickly. The idea is, even starting with concrete objects, everything that you see is just colors and shapes. And we could take it much farther than this, but we'll just say it's colors and shapes. Your eye cannot see computer or cup. Your eye sees shadow and light. And we could even go much farther, right? Into empty space that it's seeing. And then your mind comes along and goes cup, computer, or even voice. Like, you can't hear me right now. You can't hear me speaking words. I am clicking and grunting. These are clicks and grunts and vibrations. And your mind, as we call it in Tibetan Buddhism, is coming along and making meaning of that. It's piecing together these things and making meaning on that. And so in a very, even concrete, gross form sense, what you're looking at is an idea in your mind. You can't actually see cup out there. You can't hear meaning in my words. They're not shooting across space, time and space at you and somehow entering and making meaning, because we're all hearing something different. Some of you are like, oh, this is cool. Some of you are like, this is weird. I'm out of here. And that's great, And so the meaning making is coming. We're looking at what we call constructs or qualities or ideas. We haven't even moved to our thoughts yet. What we're looking at when we're looking at our thoughts, right? Which are just clouds in the sky coming and going. Everything is an construct, idea, reality itself. It's can be very, when one sees this themselves directly, which needs to happen. You can get through logic. We spend months doing logical, conceptual, and Gelugpa training on this because it's helpful when we're walking around the world to remember what's happening, right? And then there's more Shaktipat pointing out instructions where you get saturated in this realization that is often beyond words, right? That everything is arising actually in me, in the big me, even Kimberley, even Scott. So that was more than a sentence, but that's what
That was great. More than a sentence worked. Yeah. So the people you work with tend to be, it's easier for you when they're at least construct aware, much easier, and they tend to be
or
more and
late
more of
fourth.
them.
Yeah,
Or
or
late
late
fourth.
fourth. Because late fourth perspective, we begin to see our projections, small p projections, upon reflection. And so then we can practice. Like, there's something in us that can feel the truth of the idea of construct awareness. We begin to see our own, and that's a game changer. Late fourth is a game changer when we can begin to see our own projections upon reflection, not just other people projecting on us, but see our own. That's a game changer.
So are you kind of extrapolating that in the lens of the conversation of preliminary practices, that any practices that skillfully and efficiently lead to construct awareness can be beneficial as preliminary practices?
Yes, and one needs focus to get there. And I believe one needs an ethical way of life. I mean, yamas, niyamas, who am I to argue? Many of the great traditions point us to training our mind to not be suffering all the time.
There's a book
And
that just came out that I'm listening to where I'm loving how the Lama, as female Lama, is pointing out the non-harm, the way she's unpacking it. The book is called How Not to Miss the Point. I don't know,
ooh,
maybe I heard about it from you. I'm listening
no.
to it on Audible. Unfortunately, she's not the one reading it, but the reader's pretty good. And she's talking about that the non-harming practice, it was a much different explanation than I expected. She's like, so imagine that you're at the top of a building and there's a giant boulder and somehow you're able to move it towards the edge of the building. And then you wait until somebody's right below and you push it over so it crushes them. She goes, that's doing harm.
Yeah.
And there are so many ways that we do this with our words or our intentions or our actions or our withholding. Where are we crushing from a willful nature anything?
Yes.
What do you think about
Ourselves and
that?
others. Yes, it's beautiful and it's so true. And it's what I often find people who are ready for studying sutra and then tantra too. And the preliminary thing I look for too is that deep realization of I've got to stop creating my own. I've got to stop something. Like something's amiss Like this is what happened to me. Like I have a fancy boyfriend, a fancy job, a fancy apartment. What am I doing wrong? I got to figure something else out. I'm pushing the rock. I'm miserable. My relationships are not great. This is the rock of my life falling on all of us. So what am I going to do differently? And you know, we have all the power. This is one of the realizations. We have all the power in our capacity. We are so much more than we know. We have all of this capacity to shift reality, not just for ourselves, but through the ripples that we ripple out for others. We have all the capacity to do this with, I believe, waking up as part of our toolbox. Being committed to the waking up process and getting used to the applications of waking up in our life, which are ethical ways of being, and not in a, oh, you shouldn't have said that way, but in a love
Or,
and
oh, I can't kill anything. Meanwhile, every time I wash my hands or breathe, there are bacteria that are dying from that. So I'm not going to stop breathing or stop washing my hands.
no,
But people
no.
do get trippy like that sometimes when they're worried about, the imagined projection of a God I could piss off who will flick me like an ant into an eternal bonfire of suffering.
Yes, it doesn't work that way. It's not fundamentalist. So having that developmental maturity in my community, and then while also holding our parts and shadow crashes that are going to come up sometimes, is really helpful, because when one of us might be having some sort of, getting caught into some of, in the community, or really, as you were describing, getting caught in ordinary consensus reality right now of too much news, there's so much suffering, you just can't look away, you just can't look away, right? And then someone else will be able to hold, without bypassing at all, help us remember, yes, we feel you, we love you, and let's get under the narrative. Somebody else will hold us. I had a medical thing happen last week in all vulnerability with this group, and it was scary, and I'm fine, but it was involved getting helicoptered out of my remote retreat location where I live, and Scott was aware it was going on. I appreciated you holding that too. And I, in vulnerability as a teacher, kind of almost circling back to one of the original questions of what's it like to be a Lama, I let my close, private cohort know, the Lama, right, being vulnerable, of I have an early part, young Kimberley, who has medical trauma coming up, who's scared. And it's more importantly, it's like I was aware of her in that moment and loving her, but more importantly, the impact that that little girl has had on my life of not getting into the doctor. Like, she's still there, not integrated,
Are
obviously,
you
because I
comfortable
won't.
starting us at the beginning of the story
Yes,
that
sure.
this illustrates? Because
Mm,
as I replay it in my awareness, the parts that you've told me, it holds everything we've been talking about. It
yes.
holds the absolute and your recognition and your embodiment of or a later absolute or direction of absolute consciousness. It also holds the humanness in its
Hmm.
rawness, its realness, wherever it still has fragmentation and pain and unfinished business. It holds the awareness that I'm embedded in many layers of collectives that are impacted by my existence. So, as much as you're willing to play out, I think it would be wonderfully of benefit.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And you can give commentary along the way uh,
Yeah, thank you,
to
and
it.
feel free to interject
Okay.
anytime, and pause me anytime.
Okay.
So I had an experience last week, actually, that sort of relates to a lot of the things we've been talking about today, and even at the beginning of this conversation of what is it like to be a Lama, and um, I yeah, and I just to recognize too, it feels vulnerable sharing it. So those of you who are listening, please take it with softness at the same time. And as I share it, may the young part in me, which was the part that really got healed and integrated, it's a young Kimberly who had medical trauma, pre-verbal medical trauma as a baby, and then at different points in my life, which has resulted in a shadow, that's I've been working for. Shadow is a term many may know. Basically, a young part who takes over sometimes. That still needs healing, seeing, and integration. And this has still been very active in my life. So I had an experience where I was home, the power was out. There was a wildfire nearby. I live in the mountains of Cascadia in Washington State, in our retreat place, a retreat location. And of course, my husband was not home. I was here with my son, 14 years old, and it was dark. And I took a last glug of a glass of water, and I was in a bit of a rush, so probably not in my most, centered. The power was out, there was a fire, but I took a last glug of water and swallowed something sharp. And it felt like it lodged in my throat. And because I could feel it, I could turn. We also have no self-service out here. So just so you know. So get in the car, go to the first emergency room, meet up with my husband, in the ER at a country hospital, which is 2 hours away. Takes us 2 hours to get there. I'm able to drive, I'm able to talk, uh, but there's definitely something sharp in here. I'm able to swallow lightly. Get there, country hospital does a scan. They can't find anything. And I am in awareness, something Scott and I have talked about on this. And I'm also aware that there's a physical part. My heart rate is a little elevated. I'm anxious. Do I have to go under? Is this what I've been avoiding this little girl? We all have these, maybe not all, but many of us still have these parts that need to be integrated. And even with me being a teacher, and I still do too, this is part of our humanity. And my wonderful husband at the time, who was driving back and forth, taking our son home, taking care of our dogs, this 2-hour drive to me, 2-hour drive back. He said, "Why don't you reach out to your community, the community I've been referring to, the current Tantra cohort, reach out to them and let them know," which the Lama might not do, right? And I did it vulnerably and reached out to my collective and let them know I was going through this. Uh, this was the middle of the night. Many of them are on the East Coast. As they're waking up, I could the it's almost like the wheel starts to turn. As the collective wheel is waking up, the wheel starts to turn. Next thing you know, I'm being told I'm going to be helicoptered to University of Washington in Seattle, over the mountains for further, because they don't really know what's going on in the country. They don't have what they need to get it out or scope down there. These 4 dakinis, these 4 show up, and within an hour. These women, Scott, they were the most beautiful. I swear they were 7 feet tall. That's how they seemed to me. Powerful, all women, gorgeous power show up and surround me in all 4 directions, take me into the helicopter. One of them's a pilot. The other 3 are around me. And the wheel is spinning. The light's coming. The sun is rising now on the West Coast, right? And my West Coast Sangha and those who live in Australia, and they're all, getting on. And they go into, let's say, prayer. They go into intention at their various capacities. I'm in the helicopter. I'm lying there in shavasana, in corpse pose, right? Even though I can walk, they have to bundle you up, and it's all very. And I just surrendered to it with these 4 goddesses, who were so emotionally aware. I think medical training has improved a lot in 20. I don't know, but they were so emotionally aware as well as physically capable. And Scott, I felt this wave of prana, of love. It was love, this tangible love by me being vulnerable with my own group. As the Lama saying, I am scared. There's a part of me that's scared. They know this is hard for me. I've been human with them. I felt it. And I felt the sharp object move up and over to the left of my throat and then disappear. Just disappeared. And I was in a sort of dream state. I didn't swallow. I just took I was in the in between a little bit, but I was also looking out the window at the mountains at the same time. It was as if all of our bodies connected. And by that, I know you know, but I don't mean physical body. All of our various kayas connected. I get to the University of Washington Hospital. It's very dramatic, landing in the helicopter. I feel like I'm in a movie. Some very hunky EMT guy, he's the only guy that was there with me the whole time, comes up, rolls me out. The dakinis say goodbye. I go in. Long story short, they can't find it. The object, they had done a CT, a CAT scan here on my upper neck in the country hospital. There was an object there. I get to University of Washington. They can't find it. My throat is still a little sore, all of this, but it's gone. They put me through a series of tests because they can't quite believe it. I'm there for another day, but it's gone. And for me, there's the beautiful story of what happened, and you could call it a miracle, you can call it whatever you want. I'm honestly reporting my experience. Deeper for me was this intention that I was holding with this particular time and moment, like the original question you asked me of what's it like to be a Lama now? I I wanted with this tantra cohort, my fifth, I guess, over 20 years, to integrate developmental awareness in the co-selection of each other. Also, when we're working with our parts, to integrate developmental awareness that might come up, the relative self that might come up. And also to experiment with what in so many communities we're looking at as the leading edge, the collective. And what is the collective at sixth person perspective? How does it emanate, create? What's it look like? What's it feel like? And how can the Lama move from being somebody we project everything onto? In a good way, it works. Lamas work, people. Like, they work. And if we understand how it's working, it can work much faster. But to move that into the collective so that the golden shadow is like re-owned by the collective consciously without mature enough to take the Lama down. So here the guru, the Lama, was healed by the collective Lama. Like the
Mm,
individual Lama was healed by the love of the collective. So the
mm,
collective healed the Lama, so to
mm.
speak. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many things that are present with that. Most of them for me are not in words, mostly in geometry, movement of geometry. As I sit here with the terms collective and individual, and like almost like a kaleidoscope.
Mm-hmm.
And we've learned from physics that reality can take the shape of a particle or a wave. When it takes the shape of a particle, it seems like a fixed location and an identity, but it's an appearance, a temporary appearance. When it takes the shape of a wave,
Yes.
there's no fixed location or identity, and we are
Yeah.
both. And that's what I'm kind of seeing in the undulation of the geometry of the self and the cohort, is like this liquidification of any fixed identities.
Mm-hmm.
In my learning and understanding of, we use the term guru mostly
Mm-hmm.
in my traditions. We don't have the term lama. And guru with a capital G, or a sat guru, a teacher of consciousness, is somebody who's typically been through a lot of training and
Mm-hmm.
practice and transformation. And these subtle centers called the guru padakams in the upper centers above the head have been opened by one's guru. One has been told to be a guru.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, my fortune is that my teachers have been very clear all along the way to say, never mistake the guru for a physical person. The
Mm-hmm.
guru is the aspect of consciousness that can reveal itself as it wills to itself. There's
Mm-hmm.
no other that it's revealing it to. It is itself. Like, there's one source energy manifesting temporarily or appearing as these different objects and beings and words and awarenesses, but it's still the one appearing as many.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
for a while, like training wheels, I mean, I needed training wheels. When I moved from the tricycle to a bicycle, I needed the training wheels to develop balance.
Mm-hmm.
And then, within a few bicycle rides, my body learned that balance. Well, these practices that we're all learning in various tantric traditions are like that. That
Yeah.
we're like, in the beginning, I need to focus on the embodiment of the guru in a person, because I don't yet have that developed awareness of to recognize that this principle of energy called the guru is everywhere. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not something I can actually yet use to transform my own consciousness. So I
Yeah.
focus on something physical, and then bit by bit by bit. And it sounds like what you're describing is that the maturity of your cohort is moving more and more, at least as a whole, into the direction where that guru principle, that transformational principle of consciousness can move through the collective without negating that you're still the teacher.
Without negating I'm still the teacher. And then others are also teaching. They're doing their retreats. They are doing their retreats. And yes. And that if you want, the other thing aspect of Tantra in my tradition too, is you're kind of the party line is you're doing it in one lifetime. Like you do Tantra because
Yeah.
you want to, more than just being a bodhisattva, you're a tantric bodhisattva because you want to do it as quickly as you can for the sake of all beings that you're impacting, right? For the sake of this world that we're co-creating and interpenetrating with everybody else, and that we can do it quickly with Tantra. And so if you have, just like if you want to be, I'll use the same metaphor, it's becoming a saint. It's like saint school. It's like master
Mm.
yogi school, kind of just like I want to be a concert pianist. If you want to be a concert pianist, you could try and do it on your own. Or you can find the best qualified teacher to teach you that. And then they reflect that to you in the mirror of our minds.
Well, there's things
Right?
we pick up. This is important too. There's things we pick up that are not spoken. And
Right.
that is something that is one of the most profound secret essences, secret, non-secret, like open secret essences of the teaching stream is that, and I'll use the example of in the early days of what was called Anusara Yoga, which came out of
Uh-huh.
Iyengar Yoga and is very centered on precise principles of alignment. When I would take a class with a certified Anusara teacher, and they've had to go through hundreds and hundreds of hours of
Lots.
training and practice and filming themselves and getting approval from the team,
Oh, yeah.
they could just walk behind my mat when I'm in down dog, and my body spontaneously would find a better alignment without being told.
Yeah.
That's what we're pointing at. Like when we talk about transmission, it's like this super instant communication. Like it's quicker
Yes.
than a cell phone. It's quicker than thought. It's infinitely quicker than thought. And so it speeds up the learning process. Like if, I remember learning tennis and the people that were really, really, really in their body and good, I learned so much more quickly in that lesson
Oh, yes.
than somebody just
Absolutely.
telling me what to do. Oh, turn your grip or do this. Like the words about had to go through my thoughts and then they get translated into, well, what does that look like in my body? Whereas transmission goes from essence to essence.
Absolutely. Shaktipat. I mean, we could share some Shaktipat stories, I am sure. And Shaktipat listeners is I mean, how do you define it? Shakti energy pot. It's where you get like whacked on the head or something.
It's a descent
And
of grace, and it can happen usually through a teacher, but it can happen through a photograph of a teacher. It happens through look, touch, word, which can be a mantra or just a dharma talk, or
yeah,
will.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it can happen through a being that is no longer in a body. Like people are getting profound initiatory experiences still from Ramana Maharshi or Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or
absolutely.
Padmasambhava or Geshe Sogyal.
Right. Absolutely. Agreed. Yeah. For me, interestingly, Shaktipots usually come physically, like a whack on the head, or touching the forehead. One of my
Ah,
biggest ones was a forehead touch, a Tibetan forehead touch.
mm,
Interestingly, I
mm,
think I'm a
mm,
harder
mm.
case, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
pot, when I've heard the translation, one scholar described, so Shakti is not like energy in a wall. And in fact, those of you who care to learn more about Sanskrit, there's an incredible book by Rajiv Malhotra called Sanskrit Non-Translatables. And it makes the argument for the Sanskritization of other languages because Sanskrit really can't be translated, but it could be included as a greater understanding. Shakti is one of these words that's often just talked about as energy, but it's not like power in the wall. The power in the wall, to my knowledge, is not conscious of itself. Shakti is the primordial principle of creation, maintaining the creation and dissolving samhara, the creation, back into its original essence without losing any of its power or any of its awareness, and is in us. Otherwise, our heart doesn't beat, our lungs don't breathe, and our eyes don't blink. So Shakti, that's Shakti. It's a descent. It's often referred to as a descent. And then the pot is like a crack, like a breaking open of a seal. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's really subtle for people. Sometimes it's tiver, 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 like super intense. And you're like, on the floor and needing support for a couple of weeks, like Ramana Maharshi, for 2 years he was on the floor of a temple before he was found and
Yeah.
supported and made to eat and like this, but he was in a
Aw.
catatonic state because the force of it was so strong.
Yes. Yes, it certainly can be. But thank you. That was beautiful, and I know it was really helpful for those listening. Sometimes if you have these experiences that seem to descend, you're not crazy. Probably, but the important thing is
Probably.
to I get probably, but the important thing is to have a teacher and a community too, to hold us in these experiences because there's spiritual experience, which is a lot what Scott and I tend to talk about together, and then there's also spiritual knowledge, which we also both have.
And
Those
just
those
because you
are
have a big experiences doesn't mean don't go do the practices. That's the thing it's really important because so many people are presenting who have been to some big plant medicine experience, had a very, very big experience that they're now remembering, but there's so much integration that needs to happen. They still haven't done enough work with their psychological mechanism and the reactivity or all the different things. So then you get this kind of spiritual superego
yes,
that's not only suffering in private, but it's creating suffering in public.
that's
So we
right.
really still need to do the practices. And we have these great examples in Vajrayana and in my tradition as well of, just Yoga Vasishtha, for example. Vasishtha was this incredible sage said to be immortal. So one of the incarnations of God, known as Vishnu, takes a form as Rama. And this whole thick book, there's like 900 pages for the abridged version, is all these stories that Vasishtha
Yeah,
is teaching Rama. He's 16. He's an incarnation of pure consciousness, but he's in a body again. So he has to start going through the stages of ego development, just like you and I, from first person to second person to third person, and has to help the nervous system of that body and everything it inherited from his ancestry to make space and become coherent enough to hold the reality of being an avatar, doing as little harm as possible to himself and others.
that's right. That's right. It never stops. It just
Ever.
changes. Yeah. Yeah, it's like there's a couple of rumors, Buddhist rumors I always wanted to dispel, and one is that desire is all bad.
Oh,
I'm a
please
tantric.
unpack that one. Please unpack
Oh,
that one.
well, just, ignorant desire is all bad, or hurting ourselves and others to try and get what we want, to put it really simply, is all bad, right? And all of the just mental and physical suffering that comes from the chase of some sort, whether it's food or sex or and desire understood from a place of awareness as arising as an impulse. It's considered in our tradition the root of creation was the wind of desire. It's a Lakey karma. It's called the karmic wind. Actually, it's called the wind of desire. That was like the primordial movement to unify with something.
And people
To
misunderstand, they hear something like this and they're like, all right, well, my desire to go do hookers and blow then must be really, really spiritual. And I'm just going to go to Vegas tonight.
Yeah, I wish it worked, I mean, if that worked, Scott and I would be down at the bar right now. I mean, if all of that worked, it would be fine. And not that there's, that can happen too, but desire when it's utilized for with wisdom from awareness, and even, we could get very esoteric, an understanding of the elements and nature and embodiment and what's happening physically. It's the most powerful thing in existence. I mean, we were born, we create life through desire, through the masculine and feminine energies coming together. And in Tantra, we do that in our bodies, inside, bring the masculine and feminine together and become, enlightened beings in Tantra they're kind of a them, they're both. So,
So we
yeah.
hear so many people in these neo-tantric circles, and only seem to hear about, sexual activity, but it doesn't seem to be wakeful. It seems to be the pursuit of better sensations. Like, what is the discernment between the so-called sexual activity that to my eye doesn't even look very sexual?
Yeah.
I mean, I know very little about consort practice, but what little I've heard from a vetted teacher is that there's at least usually about 45 minutes of mantras that both are doing, and they have to be literally establishing their awareness as as Shiva and Shakti, or as God and Goddess, or form and formlessness, before even physically touching anything.
Yes. Well, just to acknowledge that this is all now secret stuff,
Okay,
so I will be very careful, and I can speak about it generally. I hold the authority to do that unabashedly, so I don't hesitate speaking about it generally, and at the same time being aware and cautious. So just for my,
thank you.
setting the scene for that. Yeah, I can't speak to the neo-tantra stuff. I don't know what that's all about. It's not that, in Anutara Yoga Tantra tradition, after many years of practice of ethics, of deep commitments to reining in one's addictions and afflictions, doing the shadow work, you know, doing the growing up process, working with parts so that we integrate as much of them as we can before moving into meta-aware practices, whether it be a state or a stage. All of these things are precursors to practicing tantric consort practice. Now, it doesn't mean sex is bad. Like, I am pro sex, I am a sex positive person. Just having sex to have sex is great, fine. If that's what makes you happy, like, I am all for, very sex positive. Um, so again, nothing wrong with any of that from, and also recognizing that's the seed I am now and how I see things now. Consort practice starts with a devotion to usually one other person. So it's a partnership that we might even use psychological terms of secure attachment, and where you feel you can be fully yourself. So there is a devotional aspect of being fully with that person and devoted to that person like you would guru yoga and Anuttara Yoga Tantra. Once you have, and there's a whole list of qualifications, right? I mean, Tibetan Buddhists love their lists and their 200, 900 page books, right? The traditions do. Um, there's a whole list of qualifications, but once have a partner you're working with, they're your guru now. Like, there is a devotional aspect where, yes, you absolutely need to keep the view when you're in the bedroom, so to speak, of divine view of self and other. And the practice in my tradition is you're in relationship with them in some form. So it's off the cushion too. It's outside of the bedroom too. So
Okay, so I'd heard, though, just as a quick
yeah,
question,
yeah.
that one's consort is rarely one's partner, like one's life partner.
It's pretty much the opposite. It doesn't have to be, but it's pretty much the opposite in my tradition.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much the opposite. If
That's
because
a
many of
high
us.
bar for selection. Like, not only, okay, how's his finances? How's his shadow work? Has he done enough therapy? Can he cook? Is he kind? Is he funny? And also, do you have a deep enough practice?
Yep, that's right. Which may or may not look like my practice. They may be agnostic or Christian, but the realization is there, which is where developmental understanding can come in, is important. Right? Say there's, fifth person perspective, stabilized, but they don't have a practice, but their fifth person perspective, they're construct aware. That's a big part of it, right? And loving and wonderful, right? So yeah, and yes, um, it is a list. It's being cautious of who you engage with, and there can also be that. So that's like your daily practice, right? Is this relationship and devotion while not ignoring it. Let me put it this way. Your commitment at this level of practice is to be able to reside in clear knowing, clear light, luminous and aware, empty awareness, spontaneously, naturally, interpenetrated with reality as it's arising in the form of your partner. So that means I'm seeing and devoted in a guru yoga way to seeing this person's ultimate reality and that they are the embodiment and channel of divinity for me, while at the same time being okay with their relative reality and their shadows and their personhood and their personality, that is evolving, is the growing up part. So like residing in the clear seeing of the waking up while being okay and working with the growing up part as we go, just like I need to do in myself. Just like I need to be okay with that scared little traumatized girl in there while holding the emptiness of it. And it took me seeing it to heal it. Like, Scott, I watched her. The part of the story I didn't share is I watched her grow up in an instant and integrate. Like, I watched her grow up in my mind and in an instant and integrate without story, without story. And
I had
that's
some
what
version of
that
this
was.
in the mirror last night, literally in the mirror last night. I was in a unexpectedly wide state of consciousness, and I was pulled to the bathroom into mirror work, which is where I do Dan Brown's 5 forms of healthy attachment, like radiating it, because I know I can for a client or a friend when they're in need. And so making that deep eye contact and then radiating safety and protection, attunement, soothing and comfort, express
Mm,
delight and support and encouragement, but staying and staying and staying. Mind would want to staying and staying and staying. And something has shifted. And it's not the first time of that practice. It is an accumulation to that moment
yeah,
over time.
yeah.
And it sounds like what you described, like there was like a moment and it was very simple. There was no crowd of applause or anything. It was just like, okay, I can come out of the bathroom now.
Yeah. Yes.
Out of the
That's pretty
bathroom
much,
into life.
yeah, that's right. That's exactly how it felt. Like, okay, I can come out now and get myself a doctor appointment. And yeah, any sort of fear, anxiety, it's different now. Yeah, it's gone. Yeah. That's beautiful. What a beautiful practice that is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm developing it. I probably should hold a little bit closer to the vest at the moment. I don't really care because it's not my original protocol, but this whole and there's a huge threshold guardian to it. You talk about threshold guardians in Joseph Campbell's work.
Mm,
To go into the temple of paradox, there's threshold guardians, or to go into
mm,
higher states, there's threshold guardians. And the
mm,
threshold guardian, one of the main ones is wandering mind.
mm,
And one of the secondary, but equally strong or stronger, is this aversion, this constructed aversion to one's appearance in the mirror. And the amount of time, and I realized I made some notes last night. We look at ourselves over a lifetime more than any other human ever has. And we carry the stain of how we didn't get our attachment needs met by the way other people looked at us or would be with us. And yet, how aware am I of all the different ways and moments I've looked at myself in a mirror? Did I radiate the things I wanted from those people in my so-called past? If
mhm,
not, now is the time. But the threshold guardians come up. I've given this practice so many times. Do the mirror work, do the mirror work. Oh, I don't have time. Oh, I don't like how I look. And okay, okay, I'm telling you, there's like a treasure trove of gold that you cannot exhaust in this practice
mm,
if you'll do it. And it's going to take time to get into the practice, to get familiar. It's not a one-time practice, it's an accumulation practice. And everyone you ever interact with from a distance or up close will be of benefit because you chose to step through the threshold.
mhm. That's beautiful. So the threshold guardians are what we need to step through.
Yeah, and we'll actually love through. That was the
Love.
realization, fresh realization in the mirror. The overarching realization is like, oh, here's the 5 forms of healthy attachment. But the overarching thing was to out create the imprints, the subtle impressions with love, however long it takes. And because we all know, really, we do know what it is to let love move. Not attachment, love. We do. We knew it as a baby. And that's what blew our moms' hearts wide open, is being looked at with that level of love. To outlove whatever's arising. So the threshold guardians only appear to be threshold guardians. They're wisps.
Yeah.
They're wisps of clouds, if that. They're not even that substantial.
Right. Right.
Like having
That's
a dream where I'm getting chased by a nasty clown. This is like 15 years ago. Waking myself up from the dream because it was so scary.
aw.
And then realizing I gotta outlove this. And somehow going back into the dream right where
Yeah.
I left off, and then deciding, I don't care how scary you are, if you're gonna kill me in the dream, I'm gonna profoundly let love come through me for whatever you are and radiate you with love. The whole thing just turned into something else like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
But we train for this. That's the thing that I hope to keep getting across. We train for this.
We train for this. We do. You got to train to learn to lucid dream, to know it's a dream.
Yeah.
And then there's the next step of not just going lucid in the dream, but changing the dream,
Yeah.
right? With love. So you said everything transformed through love, right?
Yeah.
Through love. What happened to the
And it's
scary
not
clown?
my love. The scary clown just turned into a laughing face. Like, it just started
Yeah,
laughing, but it was like a pleasant laugh. It was a sweet laugh.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know if this is how it happened then. It's so long ago, but in my memory, it was like the laugh was like, "Good job, you saw through the mask."
Yes, yes.
And the deeper realization that's actually freshly arising right now is that that clown, that scary clown, that murderous clown, was one of my parts projected
Yeah,
outward as though something out there was coming to get me. It was all inside. It was only
yeah,
ever inside.
yes.
There's no out there out there.
That's right.
Kimberly, there's a question I ask every guest, and it
Okay.
stands on the shoulders of this gorgeous quote that I've loved sharing for years from Shunryo Suzuki Roshi, who opened the Zen Center of San Francisco in the
Yeah,
60s.
yeah.
And he would say, "Death is certain, the time is not. What is the most important thing?"
Mhm. Hmm. Loving awareness for self and everybody. Loving awareness for self and everybody. Yeah. Right now, that's coming through. And if loving awareness is something, listeners, that is familiar to you, that part of you, like think of maybe even how you feel when you see a baby animal, like a baby elephant or puppy or kitten. I mean, it begins there with this loving awareness, love blooming in you as a felt embodied experience, and awareness being saturated with that love and directing it towards yourself and all beings. That's it. Just getting used to that, I think, is most important right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for this incredible dialogue. I'll remind us all that dialogue means to discover together, and you're a fun dialogue partner. You're so willing to not know and discover together and stand for what you do know. And
Thanks.
as I've said to
Really.
several guests, thank you for everything that you've been through and sacrificed in life to be here in this way at this moment that we'll never know about. Thank you for all those choices in the small moments where you chose to grow.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. And may this be of benefit in some small way to everybody out there. Yeah.
Maybe
Thanks.
so, and so it is. So,
Yeah.
listeners, if you've been listening for a while, you know what we do next. We're going to join together into the big, creative, loving silence. And we'll do that for, I don't know, 10 to 20 seconds. And then we'll join together in the next episode. We're always connected in the universal. So, soften the soles of your feet and the palms of your hands like you're opening imaginary fists with your mind. Let your exhales become long. Each exhale an occasion to soften the body like you're setting down a heavy burden from every cell. Loving the episode? Click to follow, like, and share it as widely as possible. Want to go deeper with the choice to grow? Explore the show notes. You'll find links there for going deeper with our guests, as well as how to work with me in the work of waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to join you in the next episode.